The first time I saw the Queen, met the Queen, that I remember properly, as it were, was in Liverpool during the Capital Culture Year, European Capital Culture Year in 2008, when I was Dean of the Cathedral, looking after the Anglican Cathedral there. And she came on a visit during that year. And it was an extraordinary moment because they were just reopening the whole city centre, Liverpool 1. That was the purpose of her coming. And there was a great reception somewhere. And I just remember there was a Rwandan woman who had survived the genocide and was in exile as an asylum seeker refugee in Liverpool. Very remarkable woman. And she was put at the Queen's table. And at the end of lunch, when everyone else was going off, the Queen spent, it must have been 15, 20 minutes, just sitting with her and talking to her. She gave that completely unimportant woman, unimportant in inverted commas, this absolute focus. And it was something she never forgot, the woman never forgot. I knew her, and the healing impact that had on her was quite extraordinary.
And would that be your fondest memory, or do you have others?
Oh no, I think there's a lot of fond memories. I can't think of any unfond memories. I think seeing her after the funeral of the Duke of Edinburgh, that extraordinary, do you remember that absolutely mesmerising photograph of her by herself? And at the end of that service, she was meant to go back up to her apartments in a car. But she noticed that among the very few guests were some German relatives who had come across, prince and princesses, who had come across, about 4 of them for the funeral. And she very firmly didn't get into the car, but went into the cloisters of St. George's Chapel and by St. George's Chapel and talked to them in order to make them feel properly welcomed and appreciated. I think that's another one that's very typical of her. And then the first time I preached in front of her, about 6...
Were you nervous?
Terrified. It was in Westminster Abbey, and it was the 60th anniversary of the coronation as opposed to the accession. So 9 years ago. And I'd been in post about 6 weeks. And I preached this sermon. And then we had lunch together. I was at the lunch, and I was on her right in Jerusalem Chamber or somewhere at the Abbey. And I didn't realise what the rules were at that point. So I was on her right, and at the beginning of the meal, she turned to talk to the Dean of Westminster on her left. And I thought, oh, what have I said? You know, turned quite away from me. And of course, there's a protocol for it. So as soon as the main course came, that was for the first course, she turned to me, and she was talking to me for the whole of the main course, and then she turned back, and then they turn each course, as it were. You turn one side and then the other, and to make sure you talk to people on both sides. And I think those stories, it sums up her extraordinary level of courtesy, but her lack of self-importance. Everyone gets treated equally. Nobody is more important. So a Rwandan refugee gets absolutely undivided attention. It was very amazing.
How do you think she has coped with the loss of the Duke, who was by her side for 72 years?
honestly don't know. I think there are very few people who do. Very properly, I think that she opens her heart to only people who've been alongside her for years and years and years and years and years. And they won't breathe a word, which is why they stay alongside her. I think, like many who've met her from time to time, I think what you see is courage, but also a complete lack of self-pity. And that means she feels grief, but it's, as she said on one occasion, it's not about me. Something that characterized the Duke as well. And therefore, she is able, in an extraordinary way, to go on with this huge gap in her life, with just total courage.
Given events that you've seen over the last couple of days or so that have been reported on, and then you talked about the Queen's, the Prince's funeral, her stoicism all the more exemplary?
I don't think there's anyone in the country who would disagree with the idea that her stoicism, her example to the country, is flawless in so many regards. You have to be quite warped not to look at that photograph and feel that there is someone who does what is right, whatever it costs. And that's extraordinary. I wish there were more of us, and I include myself, who had quite that sense of just going to do the right thing.
What can you tell me about the service of Thanksgiving?
The service of Thanksgiving has distinct echoes of the coronation in terms of some of the music, but is also forward-looking. It is in no sense maudlin and nostalgic. It has a distinct forward-looking, deeply Christian-based, faithful hope for the future. I think it's a service that, if we allow ourselves, will have a massively uniting impact on the country.
Justin, Archbishop, Your Grace, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thank you very much, Kay.
Thank you, much appreciated. Thank you.